has been said these last days, we've been endeavoring to understand the nature of emptiness. But out of that arose the statement that it is not possible to begin to understand the nature of emptiness until we abide in a state of Satchitananda, or existence, knowledge and bliss. And out of this arose the questions: how do we know when we're living in a state of existence, knowledge and bliss? How do we know when our street smarts, our intuition and our subjectivity are working together in the moments of life? And what is it that allows these three to come together seamlessly in our life? So let's test this by creating a riddle which can only be answered when we are in that unified state. Mullah Nasruddin was at the coffee shop on an occasion when a wandering dervish was waxing lyrical, philosophizing about truth. Now, the mullah sitting there listening was very skeptical. He was doubtful, and he vocalized this to his friend who he was having coffee with. And his friend said, well, there's a way to answer this. You need to go to an enlightened sage. So Mullah Nasruddin took himself off to an enlightened sage. And the enlightened sage told him that the only way he could reconcile this was to go to the holy books where it was written, truth. So Mullah Nasruddin went to the holy book and read the holy book. And the holy book, of course, said, know the truth and the truth shall set you free, and the only place the truth can be found is within. So after a while, his friend from the coffee shop said, well, did you reconcile and reach a conclusion about your doubt? Oh, yes, said the mullah, but now I'm doubting whether it was the pundit, the sage, or the book. And then there were two rabbis having a discussion. One rabbi said to the other, you know, when I stand up in my pulpit and I talk about truth, nobody comes to the synagogue. But when I stand up there and I tell parables or stories, the synagogue is full. And the other rabbi said, well, let me answer this by telling you a parable. He said, truth and story were walking down the road. Now, truth was naked, as he always was. And story was dressed in the most fabulous garb, purple tights, golden shoes, beautiful resplendent headdresses. And as they got into conversation, Truth was bewailing his fate, saying, you know, I'm old, I'm very old, and I'm very wise. But you know, nobody invites me into their house. People shun me. I can't go anywhere. And Story said, well, look, let me loan you some of my garments. And so he did. He loaned Truth some of his fancy garments. Well, of course, as we know, truth and story now go hand in hand together, pretty much generally everywhere and are welcomed into all places that they go. So it goes. But then there's a third story. A flea and a fever met each other on the road and got into discussion about who had the better life. Now, the flea said, "Look at me, I can go anywhere. I can go into the smallest places, I can go into the biggest places, anywhere at all. And look at you. You don't even have any form. You don't even have any shape. In fact, you're invisible. So what can you do?" Well, they almost got into fisticuffs about it. It really got into a very, very heated argument. And then Fever said, look, let's not go further than this. Let's put it into practice. He said, look, over the next 3 days, you go and do your thing, I'll go and do my thing, and when we get back together, we'll exchange notes and see who had the better deal. So Fever went off and Flea went off, and after 3 days, when they came back together, there was Flea looking very dejected. And Fever said to him, "Well, how did you go?" And Flea said, "Well, I went into this palace, and I went into this bed. It was satin sheets, and it was the most... I wish I could describe it to you, but I'm a flea, I'm not a poet." But, he went on to wax lyrical about his surroundings, and then he said, all of a sudden, this big hulk got into the bed, reeking of brandy, and tossed and turned and tossed and turned. So I thought, okay, you can disturb me, I'll do my thing. So did I get into him. I gave him all my best, so he had a good reason to toss and turn and toss and turn. And then, all of a sudden, he sat up in bed and he said, "Flea!" Well, people came from everywhere. And did they hound me? They followed me, they chased me. I had to leave. And for the next 2 days, I've been wandering around hungry, and here I am today. "Oh," said Fever, "well, I was walking along the road and I came across this peasant. Well, I thought, here's a likely candidate, so I hopped right into him. So he went right home and he said to his wife, 'Wife, I think I've got a fever.' So she immediately made some hot soup, and I enjoyed the hot soup. And then he went to bed and she covered him over with blankets and a nice cloak, and it was nice, toasty, warm. And whenever he decided to get a little bit comfortable, I just did my thing and went to work on him. So his wife would bring in more tidbits and more goodies, and it was just a fabulous life. He said, I would have stayed there, except that, I had to come over here and meet you. So who was it who had the better life? Of course, Flea had to concede that it was Fever, and Flea went off down the road feeling very dejected. Now, this is a riddle. When we put these 3 little stories together, they can only be understood, and we can only come up with an answer to what we've called this riddle if and when we have these 3 together in this present moment as we hear these stories. Our street smarts, our understanding of the workings of life at that nitty-gritty level, cause and effect, action and reaction, and that intuitive, knowing, magical, occult level. And this level of interrelatedness and oneness that we have with all things, which bring to us the compassion and pity and empathy. When these three are abiding, we can have a response, we can answer any riddle that life presents to us. So in this little test, when we put these three little stories together, it can be asked of you now, what is it that comes up for you? As an answer to this riddle. What is it that arises out of this state of Satchitananda, existence, knowledge and bliss, working together seamlessly in every moment of our life as we abide in the moments, to bring forth whatever is appropriate, whatever answer is needed, whatever it is in any given moment as a response to that inpouring of life. But for the moment it's just this riddle. What is it that arises for you out of these three stories from your understanding?
Well, the first one, he was looking for truth.
Yes.
And went to all the source of the truth, discovered it was within.
Yes.
And then he had doubt about where truth came from.
Right.
So truth is like in the existence level. If you're in truth, you should be in the plane of existence, which is fairly clear narrative. And then we had truth and story together. Yeah. And truth is always naked for a good reason, isn't it?
Yes.
So if we dress it up, what's that mean? But they went around together and everyone welcomed them in, but they wouldn't welcome him in when he wasn't dressed up.
Yes.
So what does that say about existence?
Yes.
But then there's the next level up, which is knowledge, and you've got that knowledge of actually what helps us actually move into that existence plane, and also helps us move into the bliss plane. So how do we use that? That was the question that was being asked, I think. And then in the last one, the last story, which was an interesting one, that's the state of bliss, isn't it? Where you're trying to get there, but can you? And Fee would believe he got there, but he didn't.
Good understanding.
You see, it's such a scab.
So it's fascinating when you look at those three levels of existence and try and apply to those three stories. Very, very deep. No doubt further things will come up as you're thinking about it, but yeah, you've got to have one to have the other to have the other.
Exactly. Exactly. And how does this allow us to recognize what it is that binds these three together?
The stories of duality.
Yes.
All of those three stories. And the point of the story is the now. Because only in the now is there true wisdom, and only in the now is there truth.
Yes. Yes. Does this explain what it is that unites them? A nowness? A being here now, or presence, or attention? Is that what binds the three together? From your experience?
Isn't it state? A state, a particular state, you're in that can be able to unite them. That could be in a particular state of mind.
No?
And I'm trying to figure out what that is.
Yes. This is a very good question for us. What is it that binds these three together in us, for us, in the moments?
Emptiness.
Emptiness, yes, of course. But emptiness, when we're looking at it now, we can see it as two sides of a coin, like the form and the formless, or matter and emptiness. And we know you can't have one without the other. But is it a binding agent? All things abide in it, of course, we can understand that. But is it a binding force? Is that our experience?
I think they are already together, and emptiness doesn't split them apart like the mind would do. Or
Oh, all right. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Could you repeat what was said? I didn't hear. Could you repeat what was said?
By-
Yeah.
By John, she's saying emptiness. What did you say?
existence, knowledge and bliss are
Yes.
already
They're
together.
already
Are
together.
one.
Existence, knowledge, and bliss are already together as one, and emptiness is just
Emptiness is the empty space
Is
where
the
they can
space.
be.
yes. And it said, is emptiness a binding force?
When there's a surrender to the resistance of these leaves and fevers and that acceptance of having both feels like there is a place where they meet.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yep. Certainly a meeting place. And you could say that was emptiness too.
Actually, I think what binds them together is probably came off from here was the canvas. When you paint these stories, the canvas is the emptiness.
All right.
That's the only thing
Like a
that
screen.
binds them
Uh-huh.
together.
Mhm. So what's the screen?
That's the emptiness.
Mm-hmm.
Awareness.
Awareness arises out of this state of presence, doesn't it? So it's external, it's sensory. So our basic question is to understand the nature of
Gratitude.
emptiness. Gratitude is an emotional answer, isn't it? It can be put together with compassion and pity and everything. It's an action of mind. Oh, you're not out of a job. I thought I was out of a job in the first time.